What's going on, Soul Nation, and welcome to another No Rest for the Wicked video. My name's Brian, if you happen to be new around here, and as we get ready to step into Thanksgiving week here in the United States, I thought this would be a great way to send you on this journey as we step into December, as we get ready for potentially the next update. If you guys haven't seen my previous content, note that No Rest for the Wicked devs were originally trying to have this update out with a shadow launch at the Game Awards, but plans have changed, and so December is on the table. January more likely is also on the table. Thomas kicks us off this morning, reminding us that nunchucks are actually planned, but he also wonders about couch co-op and seeing if they can't get that to work for No Rest for the Wicked, and especially because this game is cross-play, cross-save on consoles, and he's also hinted that it's coming to Switch too. I think that would be a really big treat, especially when it comes to Switch 2, assuming that it is the same kind of or similar form factor. You could actually have couch co-op with everybody on their own screens and playing and enjoying it. That's the unique benefit of multiple Switches, but it's not the cheap option, mind you, if you're lucky enough to have 4 Switches in your household. He goes on to say that playing with 3 to 4 players on one screen can be insanely fun, but when asked, honestly, I don't see if Wicked is able to handle rendering 4 cameras at the same time. And Thomas goes on to answer that they're probably going to go with the Diablo 3 thing, where you just need to have everyone on one screen at once, and while that's way less cool for Wicked, it's easier for people to just play together online, since the Switch has everyone on their own screen and their own resources anyway. Now guys, if you enjoy No Rest for the Wicked content, if you like culture war stuff content, if you like what I am attempting to do here, especially with the message of hope, I invite you guys to find that subscribe button, and if you do, let me know so I can officially welcome you to the channel. We have roughly 84% of you guys who have yet to subscribe, but also we are almost back up to 5% for the ladies, so
welcome to ladies night, baby.
We're glad that you're here, and really appreciate that. We dropped down into the 2%ers, and now we're back up only so close to 5%. We'll see if we can hit that in future videos. Also, if you guys enjoy more of my content, you can check out Ginger Prime TV for live streams and reacts, or if you want shorter form content, you can always check out Ginger Prime Clips or Ginger Loves MMOs. Note to self that I do make a lot of crazy content here online, and I appreciate those of you who find joy in consuming it. So thank you so much for being here. Let's kick it off with some of the biggest news of the week. Thomas says, hey, he just came out of a system sync, and they've been discussing where they want to take the enchantment and gems for 1.0. For the next update, that they're going to have a tweak the current system, but ultimately they kind of want to end up with, hey, we all really like Final Fantasy VII's Materia system. We should do something just like that. Would people here be on board with that? Because we kind of have to do some degree already, except you have no control over it at the moment. Meaning you can deal heat damage, but then also deal heat damage on backstab, etc. So wouldn't it be cooler if players would customize that on their white items themselves? Meaning slot in a ruby and you get your 10% fire damage boost, but link it with backstab gem and you get 25% fire damage, backstab, etc. So players could synergize around that more directly. And he goes to highlight it. Well, blue and purple, you'd still get your random rolls and maybe 1 or 2 linked slots or unlinked, but white needs to be fully customizable, and that's what you could do, and you could just go bananas. And he says, basically thinking about this, highlighting the Final Fantasy VII Materia system. I also, with Final Fantasy VII Remake, absolutely think they crushed it. It's such an interesting take on just that system, and I'm surprised we haven't seen that system in Final Fantasy used more so. So I'd love to see that. Also, I love the Esper system from Final Fantasy VI. If you guys don't know, I'm a huge Final Fantasy fan, and I just beat Final Fantasy IV Pixel Remaster, and it was amazing. Just kicked back up onto 6 and playing it after 30 years. Absolutely fantastic. So come hang out. Maybe I'll do some live streams if you guys are interested in that. But anyway, Thomas goes on to say basically have gems with the effects and utility gems that you could mix and match and try all sorts of combinations. Now, when Scrack asks, I hope that we don't get random explosions in the overworld, Thomas just confirmed that no, the Crucible is okay with the arcadey madness, but the open world is not going to be made into the, what the Crucible is. And he says he's okay with the Crucible boons making Wicked feel a little mad like Diablo, but the OG game should always still rely 100% on skill. And I am fully on board with that aspect. I like the Crucible for that, but he goes on to tease another new mode that they are potentially considering. And I think that could be a good reintroduction as well as that Crucible system to it. But we'll talk more about that here in a second. If you've already seen the thumbnail and title of this video, you know what I'm talking about. But if you just had this randomly autoplay, I'm going to tease this out just a little bit longer. Dank Meme God asks, I guess that what you do and you gain and you lose and you go to the gym route versus the various enhancements. And Thomas breaks it down. He says, white item is a journey. You'll have to find all kinds of gems to set them up the correct way to end up with your ultimate item. Max extra potential plus 50%. Blue item, random roll, max extra potential plus 50%. Purple item, higher trade-offs, higher highs, lower lows, max extra potential plus 70%, and gold items forces you to adapt to its unique playstyle, max extra potential plus 70%. Dank Meme God follows it up. He says, I still can't see a reason to go with randomly rolled enchantments over the gems if this were to be dove into and added. And he says, and that's okay. You'll just have to pay the journey cost then. And he says, on paper, this sounds solid, but runs the risk of running into other rarities becoming invalid. And Thomas replies, that's why I mentioned these percentages: journey versus random versus trade-off versus unique. Skreck, I don't see much to think about until we actually get to see it. It all depends on totally how it is. And Thomas replies, that's why I quickly wanted to discuss it at a high level. Did you guys play the OG Final Fantasy VII and like the Materia system? And I said, absolutely. please. And then Dank Meme God follows it up with, I want to journey with their white gear and consider allowing people to resocket gems, especially since it's all about the linking. And Thomas confirms that with this system, resocketing would be possible. Now, let's address a couple of elephants in the room, especially when it comes to the level of communication. I know people are wanting a more official news from the developers at Moon Studios. And so while we're all waiting for that, I am somewhat kind of filling in that role in an unofficial capacity. And I know that's not for everybody. Not everybody likes my style, and that's perfectly fine. So I'm with you guys on rooting for official dev communication. I do think and have it on good authority that that's coming very soon. But let's talk about it a little bit because that's brought up here in today's video. Cole1 says, which I would like to ask about, Thomas, are you guys holding out for something before booting up the communications? I just don't get it. And Thomas says, yeah, I can't really care about this right now. There are so many haters on the internet. Who cares? The best thing we can do is just drop a huge update that is excellent and it will shut up all the haters. And Thomas goes on to say, I'd rather spend my time on that than worry about Keyboard Warriors screaming dead game. They do have that for every game out there and every community because of some sick obsession. And whether it's a game that comes out and updates and delivers, they never come out to say, oops, sorry, I was wrong. They just wait for the next opportunity to once again go and crap on others. Life is too short to worry about the various different trolls. What he's talking about here, I want to break this down from a development mindset. For those of you who don't know, software dev, I'm working on several different things. One of them is my own game. I will hopefully have some updates here in the new year on that. That all being said, is that there is always going to be a trade-off in terms of communication and development. Right now, their focus is nose down. They are in the weeds. They are working on it. Does that excuse their inability to communicate? No, but actions mean louder, are going to speak way louder than words, right? I've been keeping you guys of all of the updates here on this channel, but those are just words and they can kind of sometimes feel hollow or you can get impatient, and none of those emotions that you feel one way or the other are actually wrong in this scenario. What I'm trying to say is that they can talk all they want, but talk is cheap. Really, the way you talk as a developer is you deliver. You deliver product, you deliver on your milestones, you deliver, etc. And while we're all hungry and anticipating the next update, I get that kind of feeling. That's the kind of talk that I think would actually satisfy all of the players. Them just coming out with a post, especially if it wasn't married with a date, if it wasn't giving you some kind of time frame, official time frame, not like, hey, we're gonna release this game sometime in 2026. No. Like, get specific, get granular, let people know and tell people the truth. And I think a lot of that, especially within game development, gamers just don't understand the level of complexity and everything that can kind of go wrong behind the scenes. We all make assumptions, and this is true in business and in games, where somebody's like, oh, this should be really easy, and it turns out your thought of easiness means it's actually really complex. And so with the development, I think it's more important to think of things as not easy or hard, but how much time is it going to take to accomplish said goal. Anyway, we'll keep you guys up to date here, and hopefully they will also keep us up to date as we step into December, and we'll see from there. We got some updates on multiplayer, and then we have a new mode being teased, which is really interesting. Jace Taylor writes, what can we look forward to multiplayer wise? Are we strictly a campaign co-op in PvP, or are there multiplayer focused quest missions, like dungeons, mini raids, etc.? Thomas replies, for now, the campaign co-op and trading PvP right after is what it looks like. No multiplayer specific missions and stuff people couldn't do in single player, because we can't sacrifice people's single player experience if they don't have a buddy to go play with. I 100% support this. I wouldn't mind some things like that would actually scale better in terms of multiplayer, like when people talk about like a mini raid, for example. I think that could be some unique piece of content that you can do solo, but it would be a little bit more challenging than obviously in multiplayer, and that degree of challenge would obviously vary. Maybe you would end up having a couple of different things, like in lieu of other players, you maybe get a pick a boon or something like that. Either way, I'd be very curious as your thoughts on that. I'm glad that they're making sure that there are single player gamers out there who would not be cut off from the content because they didn't have somebody to play with. I think that I don't think that would sit well with me unless it was advertised as 100% social MMO, and they're not advertising it like that. So I think that's perfectly fine. It's perfectly fine for those games to exist too. Not every game needs to be for every player. And speaking of which, I think this is really interesting, because we're going to talk about Battle Royale. And I know, especially as gamers out there, I get a lot of that, rolling of the eyes, but it's like, it is a very popular mode, and Thomas is brainstorming here. He's not committing to it, but it could be something interesting. So let's see what he has to say about it. He kicks it off. He says, we don't also see a need for the PTR yet. They've discussed doing a private beta for multiplayer at some point just to test the servers. This is just a reminder. He's talked about this before. Ultimately, this would be really, really, really cool. I have not gotten access to this. I've only seen some behind the scenes stuff. I'm looking forward to when we can talk more openly about that, and you can see it too. Hopefully here next month will be when we can do that. But Thomas kicks off his brainstorming session with, hey folks, we'd like to brainstorm something for a second if some folks here are around. He goes on, I think it'd be interesting to see how people would react to multiplayer. I'm guessing a lot of folks will be very happy since Wicked is delivering a different multiplayer experience than what you get in Diablo 4 and PoE, etc. This is more intimate since you actually have to invite people you want on your server, and then you share your realm with them, not just for a session, but you make an actual commitment. But I'm certain that there are some criticisms that we'll see at some people who will miss the bigger online social feel, and that you will get to play your MMORPG, etc. Now, right now, we're only able to play with 3 other folks, and that's in your world. So not going to wear your fancy gear and impress dozens of other players that you don't know. And I don't know if that is something that we should be worrying about, even at all, even for 1.0. But the thing is that I can find something interesting I'd like to discuss is adding more modes for multiplayer, so that we might not have that co-op experience, but also just sitting back smoking my pipe and wondering what could come after the Battle Royale. I get the allure of the Battle Royale thing, but I don't think people would really enjoy us just ripping that off. But I do think that it'd be interesting to adapt a free roam mode where you can experience that with other players, and it's PvE, PvP, PvE, and if you die, then you're out of the game. As in, it might be fun to start a game with, say, 25 other players, but everyone spawns somewhere in Isla Sakura, and everyone, I butchered that, Isla Sakura, and everyone starts at level 1, and then the loot is normalized so that everyone first gets lower level weapons and has to engage with enemies and challenges in order to progress their characters. Basically, I'm wondering if it would be interesting to mix the elements that we've seen in DayZ and some other stuff that we've seen in Battle Royales. And by the way, this is me thinking out loud. This isn't something that we're going to target from 1.0, but it's interesting. It's such an interesting concept, namely because we see how popular Battle Royales are. I've seen the diehards say, Halo doesn't need a Battle Royale, or this doesn't need a Battle Royale. And it's like, but there is a huge player base, especially a younger, more engaged player base that has time to play, that is not playing your game because they are still playing their version of Battle Royale. And I think Call of Duty is the best way to kind of send that point home. Did they need it? Well, I know that people were making that argument, but it's very popular. It's a very popular mode, and we can't deny that fact. He goes on to be asked regarding this new mode, would the mode actually have access to the city? And he says, this is just fascinating. I don't know. Obviously wouldn't want high priority on the list, but I'm just wondering what kind of crazy stuff we could do that once we have all of ISO Sacra done and shipped, and how we could keep Wicked endlessly entertaining forever. And these kind of modes could help with that. Hardcore would always be fun because you always live on the edge that way. Same thing with something like this. It'd be fun to join a server and play for 2 to 3 hours and see if you can become the last man standing. Thalaman writes, I think it would be interesting and fun to try and collect loot and then rush to, say, Warwick or Derek's spawn points and try to kill them and grab the legendary drops. Thomas replies, and then it would be the first person on the map with these weapons, and then you'd see other online players in order to murder them all. All right, that's the update regarding a new potential mode, a potential Battle Royale maybe making its way into the game. Honestly, I think it's a smart play as long as nothing else the game is sacrificed, a new option for people to take part in, especially when it comes to the PvP PvE aspect. I'd love to hear your thoughts. There are no wrong ideas here, as Thomas is just brainstorming it. Now he goes on to talk about stealth builds, and he says, hey folks, would be fun to brainstorm what people think about stealth builds a bit. Here's what he is currently thinking. We have a way now to detect if players are within shadows or not. So I think that we should make full use of that, even if we introduce a new UI element that clarifies of a player if they are hidden or not. Once hidden in the shadows, I'd want players to actually pay attention to enemy patrol paths, etc. So you'd stay in a shadowy spot and have some enchantment that increases your damage while you're hidden, and then you could throw shurikens, knives, etc. at enemies once they're in the spot that you want them in. Another cool thing would be to introduce something like Scorpion's come over here spear move that you can directly pull enemies to where you'd want them. Number 3, imagine if just playing through Mariner's Keep in a stealthy way and the player doesn't have a way to really modify the environment itself. So we need to give the player some skills that would allow them to move the odds in their favor. For example, we have the Spectre rune, which makes players half invisible, so you're much less likely to be detected by enemies. And you still can't walk right in front of them and make a bunch of noise, but you can basically cast Spectre and become super stealthy while it's draining your focus. But you could also sneak behind enemies and then that way try and go for various backstabs. I always fought against the team removing sidle, and I like that the whole MGS thing is there. Being able to sidle up against a wall, knock on it, and have the enemy check out that noise where it came from, and you can maneuver behind their backs to backstab, etc. Smoke bombs could also be interesting for multiplayer so that enemies would lose sight of the player who's within the smoke for a short period of time. Setting traps in general also seems like a cool idea. Now, Screct asks, will stealth apply in any way to boss fights? And Thomas says, well, that's always going to be the difficulty with that kind of role. Going on to say, in general, he'd like to add on top, the enemy perception system is something that they wanted to do another pass over in general because I'm not happy with where we left things. I always wanted enemies to be more responsive and a bit smarter, etc. Some of that has always been done with multiplayer since we need to make sure that one player can't just kite enemies while the other player backstabs. But I'd want the enemies to just generally feel more human. The rest of the systems won't be re-engineered for stealth, but we can nudge this or that so that stealth works nicer. And so we've got some more updates. This is a pretty big video, guys. Bow staves have been talked about. Let's kick it off. Morgas says, yeah, that's something we need to ask Thomas. melee only staff type of weapons. I'd like to be able to play a monk type character, and there's a staff that I really like, but it has magic runes in it. And Thomas replies, like bow staffs. And yes, bow staffs are on the list. In fact, they've had the animation team start working on that already, and they've used some of those animations for bow staffs already on the mage's staffs as well. He goes on to say whips would also be fun because then he could play like Castlevania Belmont. And then he finally goes as a sneak peek on weapons in the next currently set up. And if we zoom in and enhance on that, you can see a bunch of different gauntlets on that list, which I think is really interesting to see. So you can kind of see how that's playing out. And we know that gauntlets are on the horizon, which will be really great to see here in hopefully this coming update. As Thomas hints that it's possible. He didn't hard confirm, but it is possible. And when asked, do gauntlets have different move sets compared to when you're unarmed? And Thomas says, yes, every weapon should have its own thing going for it. I think that's really great to see. Morgath has a question. He says, are we going to see a level increase when the update drops? And Thomas says, still undecided. It's a possibility, but I guess we'll have to wait and see. Currently, the level cap is at 30, and we are all waiting for this next update. When asked if he thinks it makes a good difference to just increase the level cap, Thomas says, yeah, it actually all needs to be built together. So if they do increase the level cap, there's got to be some reason for it. Otherwise, you run the risk of just everything, getting too squishy if it isn't prepared. Now, in our last bit of news, Thomas did go to spend some time talking about the timers in the game, and there's kind of two different things here. He wonders if people were bothered that when you got to Sacrament and you didn't have all the materials to be able to upgrade your gear. Is that something that bothered you? And goes on to say that originally that the game were actually working on a 24-hour clock, and so that if it was 6 p.m. for you in the real world, that's the time you were in game. The reason they changed this late in the process was that internally a lot of folks had concerns that some people could only get to play after work and would only be able to play nighttime game mode. So this is how everyone here feels about that, right? We have a 3-hour day-night cycle, and would you folks be upset if we changed it to 24 hours instead of the in-game and real-world time match perfectly? And my answer to that was, I just say make it a mode where, yeah, you have the 3-hour day-night cycle, maybe you have a 6-hour day-night cycle, maybe you have a 12 and a 24. That way, you setting up your realm couldn't define those parameters, and I think it would be really interesting. Thomas has mentioned many times Animal Crossing, and I think that could be something very unique where he's trying to build in all these game mechanics and ideas and bring them all together under one roof. Now, anyway, guys, that's all the news that I have for you guys today. If you want to stick around, it's time that we jump into our message of hope, especially as we get geared up for the holidays. Holidays can be a very lonely time for a lot of people, especially when you have shorter days. I get seasonal affective disorder. I fight this with exercise and vitamin D. I take a vitamin D supplement because as a ginger, me and the sun don't actually really mix well together. I've already had skin cancer once, and we always got to be monitoring that very closely. But I want to talk to you guys about never giving up, especially on yourself. You might not know this, but you only fail when you stop trying. And it's not that we don't have setbacks. It's not that sometimes we could be our own worst enemies. I know I am very guilty of this. I think that's a very human thing about it. But one of the reasons why I like to use baseball analogies is because the best baseball players in the world fail 70% of the time. They strike out, they don't get on base, and they are considered the best of the best. And so don't, measure yourself against, like, honestly, I would say that comparison is the thief of joy. Social media makes that easily more apparent. You can see subscriber counts, you can see views, you can see these things, and it can sometimes feel like you're kind of the odd man out. And I'm going to tell you, you're not. I always still think, and I find it funny, and one of the things I always tell, these people, I'm like, when I became an adult, I was really surprised to find out that everybody's just faking it. We're all just trying to figure this out. No, like I have yet to make that person who's like, yeah, I've got all this figured out, and I know this deeply. And it's like, maybe that person exists, but I always kind of find that to be very funny. It's like, okay, we're all just here pretending. Got it. We all know we're professionals here in this case. The other thing I want to leave you guys with is the harder you work for something, the greater you're going to feel when you achieve it. This is something that I find interesting, especially in the debate around like MMOs and how games have just become so like, oh, here's your reward, or you can swipe your credit card and you can get that thing too. It feels so cheap, and that's one of the reasons why I don't like it. But the thing is that when we see things, whether it's gaming, whether it's life, the harder you actually work for it, oh man, the elation that comes when you eventually achieve that. So I've shared my weight loss journey, down 80 pounds. In the last video I shared, I'm almost out of my obesity range. I'm almost below, I'm like a 32 right now on my BMI. And obviously I'm very strong, so I might technically be just overweight and not obese, but like I definitely, you know, I'm looking forward to, regardless of my muscle mass, to get that rating off me. It's like, it's gonna be great. But yeah, it's a journey. It's gonna, and I know I still got years to go until I'm at my, you know, set point weight where I'm rocking and rolling all things and, you know, living my best life. But yeah, it's worth it. And just like when we paid off $100,000 of debt and started living debt free, yeah, it was hard. And that pain of these experiences kind of act as a self-defense. Like, I don't go borrow money because I know how painful it was to get out of debt. It's very easy to get into debt. No one's going to stop you. They're just going to want to just, you know, shower all this money on, because it's a trap. It's like a noose around your neck, and somebody else has got the ability to pull that cord on you. Same thing with weight. I, you know, having struggled and lost, you know, this much weight and continue to lose weight and get to my goals, the difficulty actually kind of ensures that it's going to be a lot harder, or, you know, a lot less easy for me to then backslide. Not that it's not possible, but it is still something out there. So don't let hard work, don't let the challenges that you face deter you, and don't give up on yourself. Keep on keeping on, because you're worth living, you're worth loving, and the world is better with you in it. I want you to believe that, because it's true. And unfortunately, for some of you, you got to keep telling yourself that. In fact, you might just want to make that like, anytime you have one of those dark thoughts, like, nope, world's better with me in it, you know, that's a lie. World is better within me. That's the truth. That is what I want you to kind of chant to yourself. And hopefully we'll see a continued improvement in your mental health, and also maybe even in other areas of your life. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. Love you. God bless you all. Hopefully you have a most wonderful day, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. But until then, take care.